it going? Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. It is Thursday. It is, more importantly, NCAA Tournament Thursday. The field of 64, the 64 that are left, already underway. We've already had one upset, one good finish. TCU wins by 2 over Ohio State in a game that TCU led by 17 at the half. They lost the lead, got it back, won late. Lots of fun going on. High Point got a chance to pick off Wisconsin in round 1. So everyone, I'm sure, working very hard, diligently getting things done, or they're just looking at their phones, trying to watch TV and do anything but work today with all the great basketball going on. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit in terms of the tournament, but I think I want to get into a few other sports items today. Number one, DJ Moore v. Jalen Waddle. Which team traded for the better veteran receiver? That debate is going on all over social media. We'll address it today. What exactly do the Bills need from DJ Moore? And then there are a few other issues today. Jack Hughes wants his Olympic overtime winning puck back. He apparently is not going to get that. I'll explain why. Golf is in very good hands. NFL officiating, not so much. So we'll get to all that today here on the Endgame. Let's start, as we almost always do, though, with the Buffalo Bills and their new prized number 1 wide receiver, DJ Moore. What exactly are the Bills going to get in DJ Moore? There are a number of Bears fans that will swear up and down that DJ Moore is much better than the guy who had 50 catches for 680-some yards last year. Much better than the player who was kind of zoned out of his own offense, someone who wasn't getting targets in favor of rookies and unproven players like Rome Odunze and Luther Burden. As much as many of us loved Odunze in the draft, and Burden too, to a lesser extent, DJ Moore was an established player. DJ Moore has multiple 1,000-yard seasons. So there's a question about DJ Moore coming off a 50-catch season in Chicago, where the only thing he apparently did wrong was not connect with the quarterback, not fit into an offense. An offense, by the way, that's currently run by the guy most people might say is the smartest offensive mind in football. I know Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay would have a few things to say about that, but Ben Johnson is right up there. And for whatever reason, DJ Moore didn't work. Now, the guess is that the argument from the Bears fans who think DJ Moore is still a very, very good receiver is that DJ Moore is more of a guy that's going to not run exact, precise routes. He's not going to run down, go inside at 8 yards and stop 3 yards inside the numbers. DJ Moore is going to run around and find space and go there. And in the Ben Johnson detailed offense, that style doesn't work. Where it might work is in Buffalo with a quarterback like Josh Allen who doesn't really throw a lot of precise routes. Josh Allen is not the overly cerebral quarterback that is dissecting defenses yard by yard. Josh Allen has a cannon. He's a giant human being. He's an incredible athlete. And those are the things that Josh Allen's going to use. So Josh Allen's going to drop back and look around. If you're open, you're going to get the ball. So DJ Moore could very well work in that system. But the question is, how much will he work? How much better can he get? Well, going through some research today, there are certainly significant reasons to doubt that DJ Moore can be an elite producer with the Buffalo Bills, mainly because of how old he is. And you might think, well, Thad, he's not even 29 years old. How old can that be? How much of a problem is it really to be a 29-year-old receiver in the NFL? In this day and age, it's actually more of a problem than you might think. Went back through and looked at all the 1,000-yard seasons. This is the bar we're going to use for this entire discussion, is a 1,000-yard season, which isn't even ridiculously good. 1,000 yards is not even 60 yards a game in a 17-game season. And some of the comparisons won't be as fair, obviously, because prior to 2021, nobody played a 17-game season. So an 1,000-yard season was tougher to get to. The ironic part about that is, with the 1,000-yard season being easier over the last 5 years because of the additional games, it is not part of a trend of increasing 1,000-yard seasons among older players. If you go back the last 25 years, so 2001 to 2025, there were 156 1,000-yard seasons. Oh. Am I not streaming?
I don't think you
That's because I didn't hit the button.
Yep.
Ah, dang it.
Did it say you were?
What'd it say?
Say you were?
No, it doesn't. I didn't hit the button. I forgot. Yep. Damn it. Thad Brown here with you on the Endgame. Getting going a little late today on a Thursday, March the 19th. It is day one of the NCAA tournament, the 64-team portion of the NCAA tournament. This is the day we all know and love. This is the day where work gets kind of pushed to the side in favor of hoops, in favor of buzzer beaters, in favor of upsets. We've already had one mini upset. Number 9 TCU knocked off Ohio State in a really fun game by 2. TCU was up 17.5. Ohio State came back to take the lead. TCU went on to win. We are orange in studio today in honor of all that basketball. We won't talk too much about the tournament today. Most of the stuff going on with the tournament is going to be over quite likely by the time you see this. This is a show that obviously we want to live for a few days. So talking about games that are in progress right this second, that'll be long over. Potentially by the time you listen to this, won't be a big part of this broadcast, but still a lot to get to. DJ Moore v. Jalen Waddle. Which team got the better veteran receiver? How much do the Bills want from DJ Moore? How much do they need from him? We'll also talk about why Jack Hughes wants his Olympic overtime puck back and why he's probably not going to get it. And the NFL perhaps dipping its toes again in the world of replacement referees. But let's start, as we almost always do, with the Buffalo Bills and DJ Moore, who is the new prized number 1 receiver in Buffalo. But what can the Bills expect when it comes to how much DJ Moore can give them? I don't know if they really need a giant season out of DJ Moore, but what will Moore do? What's the reasonable expectation for this receiver that they've traded away a potentially valuable second-round pick for? Well, there are a number of Bears fans who will tell you that the 50-catch, 680-yard season Moore had last year in Chicago was not really Moore's fault. That this is still a high-level receiver who got pushed aside because he didn't connect with the quarterback. Now, mind you, he connected with the quarterback for 96 catches the year before, but last year not as much. The offensive coordinator and the scheme could have a lot to do with that. What Ben Johnson likes to do is run a very precise offense. He wants receivers who are going to run 8 yards and then go inside 3 yards and stop. DJ Moore's game, and you can see it on film, is I'm going to run around and find space and go there because there's no defender there. And perhaps it's just as simple as DJ Moore's lack of precision, DJ Moore's more open style when it comes to getting open just didn't click with what Ben Johnson wanted to do. Now, Ben Johnson might be the best offensive mind in football right now. I know Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay will have legitimate things to say about that, but Ben Johnson is without a doubt up near the very tippy top. So if DJ Moore didn't work there, why is he going to work in Buffalo? Well, Josh Allen is not exactly an uber cerebral quarterback. It's not how he operates. Doesn't mean he's dumb. It just means it's not what he does. Josh Allen has a cannon. Josh Allen has incredible athletic ability. Josh Allen is impossible to bring down. So those are the things that Josh Allen is smartly going to lean into. And that means a receiver like DJ Moore, who frankly is just going to flat out get open, could easily work a whole lot better in Buffalo. But the question is, how much better is he going to work? And I think there are many, many reasons to have skepticism about DJ Moore having a super productive year. Did some research today, and the bar we're going to use for all this discussion is an 1,000-yard season. Keep in mind, 1,000-yard season is easier now than it was a few years ago because the league plays 17 games. You don't even have to average 60 yards a game to get to 1,000 yards in a season. But ironically, coincidentally, there have been less 1,000-yard seasons among players 29 and older than there were 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. And remember, DJ Moore is going to be 29 in less than a month. So this is what we're talking about. Receivers in the NFL currently can, and many do, fall right off a cliff by the time they hit 30 years old, if not earlier. And to underscore this point, if you go back 25 years to 2001, last 25 seasons, there have been 156 1,000-yard seasons by a player 29 or older. If you go 5 years forward, so take out 01, 02, 03, 04, 05, and go to the last 20 years, that number drops to 108. So you are subtracting a fifth of that range, a fifth of those seasons that you're using as the sample size, and the sample drops by almost a third. If you go another 5 years, so over the last 15 seasons, there are only 66 years of a player 29 or older who had a 1,000-yard season. So there are more 1,000-yard seasons by a player 29 or older between 01 and 2010 than there are 2011 to 2025. And it's not even close. It's 90 to 66. Now, the curve kind of flattens out there because if you go 5 more years forward and go to 10 years, there have been 42 1,000-yard seasons by players age 29 or older in the last 10 years. So the league is averaging about 4 and change over the last 15. It's the same average over the last 10. So 2011 till now, though, in the whole league, 4 guys, 29 or older, are going to get 1,000 yards on average. So right off the bat, just simply by the virtue of being 29 years old, the odds are already against DJ Moore going for 1,000 yards this year. But let's take it a little deeper, okay? DJ Moore isn't just 29 years old. There are more circumstances to what he's doing. DJ Moore is coming to a new team. He's going to a new quarterback, right? And the hope for Bills fans, the goal for Bills fans is that Josh Allen and his ridiculous athletic ability will turn DJ Moore back into the 1,000-yard plus receiver he was a few years ago. All right, well then, how often has that happened? And the answer is, as you might imagine, even less. Before we get into the exact circumstances of the DJ Moore situation, let's just pare it down to receivers in the last 20 years who have gone for 1,000 yards as a 29-year-old without doing it the year before, having 950 or less, because there's a couple guys had 960. Didn't help me in the research here at the point I'm trying to make. Only 10 receivers have done what DJ Moore is trying to do, which is go for 1,000 yards at age 29 a year after not doing it. So most of the 66 guys who have had 1,000 yards when they were 29 since 2011 also had 1,000 yards the year before. DJ Moore did not. So we're already talking about a player whose production had decreased the year before. And frankly, DJ Moore's production decreased a little bit 2 years before that too. So 2 years in a row of decreased production. One mostly irrelevant season going down, and then a big notable one that raises red flags going 50 for 682 last year. So only 10 guys, if DJ Moore goes for 1,000 this year, have done what he's trying to do. Keep in mind, on top of that, DJ Moore is doing it on a new team with a new quarterback. If you include those parameters, the number drops to 5 receivers who have done it. DJ Moore also has never made a Pro Bowl. Now, I know the Pro Bowl is wonky, and guys who make it can be a popularity contest, and then guys ask out and other players make it. So the Pro Bowl is never going to be a hard and fast, beyond reproach barometer of how good a receiver is. But you can use it, right? There is a level of player who would have made the Pro Bowl. DJ Moore has never made a Pro Bowl. And I know it sounds weird for a guy that's had 90-plus catches multiple times, 1,000 yards multiple times. DJ Moore has never been to a Pro Bowl. So if you're talking about receivers who have caught 1,000 yards in their age 29 or more season, who have never been to a Pro Bowl, 5 guys. 5 guys in the last 20 years. So there are multiple reasons why DJ Moore, just historically, is not a good bet to get to 1,000 yards. In fact, his line right now at DraftKings is 774.5, which to me actually sounds like a pretty good number. It's pretty much about halfway, maybe not halfway, about 100 yards more than what he had last year. I would have a tough time betting that either way. I think that's a solid number. So we've gone through a couple different parameters here about what the odds are against DJ Moore getting 1,000 yards. Well, how about we put all the stuff together? A receiver who, age 29, on a new team or a new quarterback, who has never made the Pro Bowl before. Has that ever happened? What DJ Moore is trying to do? I found one guy who fits that parameter. And Bills fans know who this is. John Brown. Back in 19. His first year with the Bills, he had 1,000 yards coming off a 40-catch, 700-yard season in Baltimore. Now, the caveat with John Brown is that most of the few years before he joined the Bills were injury marred. He had a season 2 years before that where he barely played at all. Obviously, he goes to Baltimore. He's still figuring things out. Wasn't a big part of that offense. And then he gets to Buffalo, where A, he's healthy most of the year, but B, becomes the number one receiver. So it's not like John Brown's lack of production was a similar circumstance to DJ Moore, where he was healthy. DJ Moore played the whole year. He just didn't get the ball. And as much as Bears fans might say that was about lack of chemistry or not being in the scheme, one thing that most football experts will tell you is that targets are an earned stat. You get the ball thrown to you because you're open, or you get the ball thrown to you because you're where you're supposed to be. Now, I don't know exactly what went wrong in Chicago. You'd have to be probably in the offensive meetings to understand that for sure. But when a guy is not getting the ball, Occam's razor says it's because he's not getting open enough or he's not where he's supposed to be enough. And those things don't just suddenly change most of the time in a new spot. And as much as Bills fans could point to John Brown, and it's not unfair to do that, to say, hey, it happened with John Brown, so it could happen with DJ Moore. That is a reasonable take. But John Brown was coming from an injury-marred past where he just wasn't on the field enough in most cases. DJ Moore doesn't have that. DJ Moore hasn't missed a game in 5 years, which is, frankly, the best check in the pro column for adding DJ Moore to your team. The guy doesn't miss games. But expecting him to turn around and have a 1,000-yard season after declining production at age 29, you're talking about almost a 1 in 100 shot here. Expecting Moore to roll in and give you number one receiver level production immediately is not consistent with what's been happening over the last few years in the NFL. Not based on his specific circumstances and not based simply on the fact that he's 29 years old. Recently, last 5 to 10 years, the league has been going away from production from older receivers. And this goes back 20, 30 years. It wasn't all that long ago, more than a decade, but not that long ago, to where the rookie receiver, the young guy, would not be ready to be productive in an NFL offense. In the same way that production for receivers 29 and older has declined over this century, production for receivers in the first couple years has increased. How many times do we see now? A rookie receiver rolls in and has a 1,000-yard season, becomes dominant. That happens more than the 29 and 30-year-old being productive at that age. Now, it's not impossible. There are other examples of guys who have done it. And two that I think Bills fans should also draw hope from are Steve Smith and Courtland Sutton. Both guys, longtime receivers, Smith significantly longer than Sutton, had rebirths with a new quarterback. When Cam Newton rolled in to Carolina, Steve Smith went from being a borderline productive 700-yard receiver right back into being a star. 1,213 yards. I don't remember the exact numbers, but he was really good. And this was well beyond age 29. This is when Smith was like 30, 33. Cortland Sutton, well, not that old, but similar, an older receiver who had been around the block, who was not very productive. Bo Nix shows up, and probably more importantly, Sean Payton, and all of a sudden he's a 1,000-yard receiver again. So there are clues and there are precedents for a guy like DJ Moore going into a new spot, showing up, seeing a new quarterback who can play, and suddenly going back to a 1,000-yard season. It can happen, but it's pretty damn unlikely. Now, the second question from this is, how badly do the Bills need Moore to be a 1,000-yard receiver? And I think the answer to that is they don't really need it that bad. This is an offense that was pretty damn good anyway last year. I know there are questions with it. It wasn't as good. We all had issues with how much it looked like Josh Allen had to drag the offense to first down at times. That without that go-to receiver, it was so hard, especially in games against better teams. And DJ Moore has a great opportunity to relieve some of that stress, but that might be all he has to do. I don't know if the Bills need Moore to be a 1,300-yard receiver. I don't know if you need DJ Moore to catch 10 touchdowns. I think the Bills might just need DJ Moore to give me 1 third down a game. Give me 2 big plays in January per week. You don't need him to be Jamar Chase. You need him to be a little bit better than what the Bills had before, maybe more than a little bit. Because this offense was already really good to begin with. There isn't much more ceiling to reach, no matter what you add. Remember, 2 years ago, they scored 30 points all the time. This is already a high above average offense. So if you add DJ Moore, I don't think the Bills need him to suddenly go out and go back to being a 1,000-yard receiver. And beyond that, if DJ Moore is just good enough to attract the best corner on the other team, or at least a little more defensive attention. And this is something we talked about when the Bills traded for Moore initially. If you get 700 yards from DJ Moore, but his presence and his ability and his threat open things up for Dalton Kincaid and Khalil Shakir and even Josh Palmer, well, you might only get 700 yards from DJ Moore, but maybe Kincaid has a $150 more than he did last year. I know Kincaid being healthier would be a big part of that too, but for this argument, let's just say DJ Moore is the catalyst. If you get 100 more from Khalil Shakir, 50 more yards from Josh Palmer, well, all of a sudden, the 700-yard season, the 750-yard season that Vegas says is right about where DJ Moore will land this year, it's still going to add up to another 1,000 yards. And if the Bills are getting 1,000 more yards from the receiving group in general, then this is going to be a ridiculous offense. So even if DJ Moore is not going to defy historical standards, not be the historical outlier, coming back to a new team at age 29 and going out for 1,200 yards, the Bills might not need it. This was still a team that last year went to overtime in the divisional round. They're close. They're close to figuring this out. And DJ Moore being a ridiculously good number one might not even be priority A1 for this team getting over the hump. Frankly, it's probably the new head coach and defensive coordinator who will have a whole lot more say into what happens than maybe DJ Moore, even if Moore certainly has the talent and potential to be a high-impact player. So yeah, the odds are against DJ Moore getting to 1,000 yards. I think Bills fans need to understand the amount of historical precedent here that says DJ Moore at this age in this situation is really unlikely to be a great receiver this year, to be an uber productive receiver this year. But if he can give the Bills a little lift, spread that lift around a little bit, then he will have, I think, served his purpose in terms of why the Bills spent that number 2 pick to get a better receiver. And then getting over the hump to a championship might be more about Joe Brady and Jim Leonard figuring things out quickly on the fly. And we talked about that on Monday in terms of how much difficulty Leonard in particular, but Brady too, will probably have in making that happen in year one. Now, of course, DJ Moore was not the only big-time receiver who was traded for by an AFC contender, because the Denver Broncos just went out and got Jalen Waddle this week. Spent a first and a third and a fourth-round swap to get there. First of all, real quick on the fourth-round swap, underrated move by the Broncos, because the equivalent of what the Broncos traded there was like a first and an early fourth, or let's say a first and a third, right? If the Broncos had traded just the first and the third, then obviously you're left with a late fourth. And instead they moved up from a late fourth to an early fourth. The draft is really deep this year. That has been the gauge on this draft. And going through it myself, I've focused mostly early here on receivers and edge players, because those are priority positions for the Bills. You can see that the difference between a player you get at pick 90 and a player who might get picked at number 19 ain't that big a deal. So if you're the Broncos, yeah, you're giving up a big chunk here to go get Jalen Waddle, but by dealing yourself back towards the top of round 4, that might be a big deal. I'm not sure or I'm not going to say for sure that the cutoff between the good group of players and the not so good is somewhere around pick 115. But I do think moving up in round 4 in this particular draft has a pretty high benefit. But as for the trade, so many Bills fans and Broncos fans are in on this too, are looking at this deal trying to say which team got the better receiver. Again, these were two teams that went to overtime in the playoffs. There's a good chance that we get to late in January, it might come down to Buffalo versus Denver once again. So who did better? To be honest, I have a tough time picking which trade I'd want to be a part of. I think Jalen Waddle is a slightly better player, certainly not in any small part because he's about, 19 months younger than Moore. DJ Moore is 28 right now. Waddle's 27, but Moore will turn 29 next month. Waddle isn't 28 until November. So it's not quite 2 years, but it's a little more than 1 year that Waddle has youth-wise on DJ Moore. To be fair, though, the way you look at when I said age 29 season, even though Waddle won't be 28 until November, next year is already his age 29 season. So all the stuff I said about DJ Moore, that's going to apply to Jalen Waddle next year. So Denver might be getting a little more of a youth benefit with Waddle, but it ain't that much of a benefit. And they paid a first and, again, the equivalent of a first and a high fourth. The Bills paid the equivalent of a high third for DJ Moore. So the price was significantly bigger for the Broncos. But Waddle is a better player, at least right now. And I think Waddle has been a more dynamic player. DJ Moore has been high floor. Again, this is a guy that doesn't miss games. He's going to play all 17 for you. And he's going to give you dependable production. Jalen Waddle, I think, has a better opportunity to flip a game with 2 50-yard catches. Not that Moore can't do it. He can. But I like Waddle a little bit better there. So I think the youth and the slight advantage in his dynamic ability makes this a really, really tough call. End of the day, this is two teams who both have had trouble drafting receivers lately. Broncos have tried with Marvin Mims and Troy Franklin. Neither of those have worked out. The Bills, obviously, with Keon Coleman, trying to sign Josh Palmer, even Dalton Kincaid. Injury issues. He hasn't really been super, super productive when he's been on the field anyway. So what both these teams are doing here is they're trying to chase after a lack of success in the draft when it comes to pass catchers. Neither team has done a good enough job when it comes to supporting their quarterback. The Bills quarterback being one of the greats of all time, probably the best one in the league right now, and the Broncos quarterback being a growing young guy who has shown some signs, but still certainly has a ways to go. When you want to evaluate these two trades too, the thing that sticks a fork in both of them is that the Steelers went out and got Michael Pittman for a 6th, 7th swap. So if you want to sit here and say which team did better, the Bills or the Broncos, the answer is probably Pittsburgh. Because not only is the price that the Steelers paid ridiculously cheaper, but you know who had the best year for a receiver last season? It wasn't Jalen Waddle or DJ Moore. The most productive of those three guys was Michael Pittman by a little bit. And the Steelers got him for practically nothing. Next to nothing, as we've talked about what a 6th for 7th round trade is. I don't think either one of these trades, if you're Denver or Buffalo, is the ideal payment for them. I think who won the trade, as usual, will be more determined by how each guy plays. Again, if DJ Moore goes out there and goes 850, 7 touchdowns, has a big postseason, no one will care about the 2nd round pick the Bills paid for him. If Jalen Waddle is an electric 1,000-yard receiver who's once a month hitting a 50-yard touchdown, no one in Denver will care about the 1st round pick they paid either. And keep in mind, it wasn't just the player and the production and the draft picks who factor into this. The Bills had to take on a much bigger contract than DJ Moore. The Bills had to take on the big DJ Moore cap hit and then restructure it and push that money down the road. The Dolphins had essentially already done that with Jalen Waddle. So the Broncos aren't taking on nearly as much with the Waddle contract as the Bills did with DJ Moore. So when you throw in the extra 15 mil or so in cap space, even if the Bills spread it down the road, they still have to take it on at some point. The older player, the slightly less dynamic player, it becomes a really tough call because of how much more the Broncos paid. So I'm not going to sit here and say which trade I'd rather have. I've really thought about this, and I have a really tough time landing at one or the other. I think both teams did the right thing in adding the receiver. Both teams, probably more so the Bills, needed a guy like this. The Bills especially because while the Broncos have Courtland Sutton, who's a dependable number 1 style receiver, the Bills don't even have that. So both teams were in desperate need of this because they just didn't draft very well, and this is how they elected this. And when you do that, I think that the lesson there, and Carl Jones posted this on X the other day, and he's smart about it, you got to draft a receiver. You got to hit on a receiver in the draft because if you don't, this is going to be the price. You're going to have to overpay for a receiver who's already on a big contract who has some questions about them. The easiest way to solve your receiver problem is to find a young guy in the draft, have him sit there on a rookie contract, be young with upside, with less injury questions. That's obviously the best way to do it. But why are the Rams, we talked about this last week, why are the Rams able to send a bunch of picks for Trent McDuffie? Because they hit on the receiver on a rookie contract in Puka. The Bills and Broncos didn't do that, so they had to overpay to a degree to go grab a veteran receiver of their own to make up for their shortcomings in the draft. I think end of the day, if you really wanted to pin me down, I'd probably go Jalen Waddle just because I kind of like Jalen Waddle a little better. DJ Moore is a guy I like, but I think Jalen Waddle is the more electric player, certainly at this point in his career. And by more, I mean like a little bit, like this much. So end of the day, I probably would have done the 1st rounder for Waddle over the 2nd rounder for Moore, but it's a really tough argument and it's really, really close. Let us take a break here. When we come back, we'll get into replacement refs, the return, and why Jack Hughes is going to disappoint his dad. I'll explain that after a break. I'm Thad Brown. This is the Endgame. Thanks very much for watching. This is Rochester First, but the cool kids, they all call it Rock One. We're back right after a break. Thad Brown back here with you on the Endgame. Tournament is raging right now. High Point's got a good look at knocking off Wisconsin. McNeese, another 12 seed. Early lead on Vanderbilt. And Siena and Jerry McNamara putting a scare into Duke early. I know a lot of you will be watching this long after those games have ended. But right now, it's pretty cool to be watching the tournament for sure. A lot of it will be here on Channel 8 over the weekend. But boy, Jerry McNamara and Siena as a 16 seed picking off Duke would be one heck of a story. And boy, Syracuse fans would feel bad about GMAC not being available to coach their team. Doesn't seem like he's going anywhere anytime soon, at least not to Syracuse. But what I want to get into now, because again, obviously trying to talk about live tournament stuff is a waste of time for a show that's going to be on and available to you long after those games are done, is the NFL's latest flirtation with replacement refs. Apparently this is something we need to talk about. So the NFL has had talks with the officials union. They ain't going well, to say the least. And the NFL now before this weekend is over, wants to apparently make contact with about 150 small college officials. I think most of the D1 guys are too connected with the officials union right now to be available. That's me assuming. I haven't looked that up at all. Regardless, the NFL wants to be prepared in case they can't come to a agreement with their current officials by the time the season starts. I know some of the issues are, I believe the NFL wants the current officials to be more available for work. I don't think we're talking about full-time officials, but more closer to full-time officials. Either way, people are worried that we're going to have a repeat of what happened in 2012 when the league started the year with replacement officials, and it did not go well. That was, you ever heard of the Hail Mary? Anybody who's not old enough to remember that game? That's where that comes from. A Hail Mary at the very end of a game. It was, I think it was still called correctly, but it certainly wasn't. The end of the day call might have been right. It 100% was not officiated very well. It looked bad. And members of the players union even talking about replacement officials being dangerous to the players. Like, I can see where that would be if you're a replacement official and you're not calling a holding correct, or more importantly, like a illegal block, a block to the knee, late hit kind of stuff. You can see where that stuff would be dangerous. I think that's a little bit of overstating the problem. And the players union is never one to miss a chance to tweak the league. But I'm not really worried too much about players' safety when it comes to officiating. For the most part, this is about the league looking bad. This is about games being officiated so poorly that it's distracting from the game itself, which 2012 didn't quite get to that. Certainly the Hail Mary moment was that. But there's a reason why I don't really care too much about replacement officials. I don't want them. I'm hoping the NFL and the officials union figures things out. I would want officials to do more work. I don't know if it's going to make that much of a difference, but it can't hurt to have the replacement, or have the referees and umpires and field judges and all that looking at film more, studying rules more. I'd like to at least try it. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is going to matter all that much. You know why? Because fans and media are just going to complain anyway. Doesn't matter whether these are seasoned, professional, top-of-the-line NFL refs or replacement guys they drag out of some Division III college. People at home and media on social media are just going to whine about it anyway. They're not going to learn the rules. They're not going to understand the rules. They're just going to look at a call and say, that's wrong. My team got hosed. It's not exactly like if the NFL figures things out with their regular officials in week 4 and they bring them back like they did in 2012, suddenly there's going to be thankfulness or happiness. Just going to be a different person in stripes to complain about. People at home don't really want to get into learning the rules or understanding the rules. Social media is in large part built for complaining, and no one uses that more than fans who think they got hosed by an official. So I don't care what kind of officials the NFL uses. It's going to feel and look the same to everybody else for the most part. It's just going to be people complaining about a guy who made an incorrect call. I think the fans and media might be more accurate in terms of when the calls are incorrect. And yeah, the game will look worse. But so much about it's going to be the same anyway. The reaction is going to be the same. The social media way we live with it through the week is going to be the same. And you know what else? You're not going to stop watching. 98.9% of you who watch the NFL all the time are going to watch just the same. And you're probably going to complain just the same about rules that in many cases fans are unable to or uninterested in trying to learn. So I don't care. I hope the NFL figures it out. I'd rather see the better officials there. But at the end of the day, we're all going to watch football. Most people are going to complain about calls, and it's going to feel exactly the same for the most part. I'm not going to get all up in arms, especially on March the 19th, worrying about the NFL and an officials union being far apart 6 months out before there's a real game. As with any negotiation, especially ones involving management and employees, nothing motivates faster than a deadline. So I think there's still plenty of time for the NFL to figure this out and avoid replacement refs. But if we get to week 1, 2, and 3, and the NFL is going to roll out replacement refs, 98% of the product is going to look and feel the same, especially the way fans and media react to it. So I really honestly don't care all that much. You know who does care? Not about officiating, but about something totally different. That would be Mr. Jack Hughes, because he does not have the puck that scored the overtime winning, gold medal winning goal in the Olympics. Now, the funny story about this is that late February, he got a question from someone in the media about, do you have the puck? And Jack said, I don't know where it is. And there was a moment apparently where the whole world who followed that conversation had to wonder about what happened to the puck. But don't worry, it's in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Well, when Jack Hughes found out about that still did not satisfy him. Jack Hughes says that he thinks it's, quote, BS that the Hockey Hall of Fame has the puck. And not just his puck, too. Megan Keller's Olympic gold medal winning puck for the Team USA women is also in the Hall of Fame and not in her possession. Now, Hughes says he wants it for his dad, who's a big collector. It's not for Jack Hughes. No. Jack Hughes doesn't want a puck for him. He's not after selfish glory. He wants it for his dad. He wants to give it to dad, have dad. Dad's a big collector, apparently. Dad's the one who really wants it, not Jack Hughes. And look, maybe it is really for the dad. There's a good chance of that. But this would not be the first time that an athlete used an excuse of this measure to get something for themselves. The point here is not whether Jack legitimately wants it for his dad. The point is, in Jack's mind, why the heck does the Hockey Hall of Fame get to have his puck? Well, the Hockey Hall of Fame was kind enough to explain that, and it's really not all that complicated. While the NHL owns all things NHL, so pucks and jerseys and memorabilia and souvenirs and all that stuff are the purview of the NHL, stuff that happens in the Olympics is operated by the International Ice Hockey Federation, IIHF. And the IIHF has what appears to be pretty much a standing agreement with the Hockey Hall of Fame that if anything cool happens that the Hockey Hall of Fame would want to keep, then the International Ice Hockey Federation essentially immediately donates it to the Hockey Hall of Fame. And that's what sounds like the way the story goes with Jack Hughes' gold medal winning puck is that Hughes scores the goal, an on-ice official, a referee, grabs the puck, hands it to an off-ice official who wraps it up nicely to protect it, and then they donate it to the Hall of Fame. There's paperwork and signatures and all kinds of official forms that go with it. So the curator of the Hockey Hall of Fame, a guy named Philip Pritchard, said the easy way, this is mostly his exact quote. He said, the easy way to explain this is that puck was never Jack Hughes' puck to own. That puck belonged to the IIHF for a few hours, and then they immediately donated it to the Hockey Hall of Fame. And what Pritchard said without actually saying it is that Jack Hughes ain't getting the puck. That thing is staying at the Hall of Fame. Same again for Megan Keller's puck. And while I understand Jack Hughes wanting what's going to be probably the most special puck of his career, something to commemorate the most special moment of his hockey career, I think the Hockey Hall of Fame is probably more in the right here. Because the Hockey Hall of Fame, as was pointed out, and any Hall of Fame, is an important part of every sport. If you want to build love and interest in a sport, having a Hall of Fame as a hub for remembering all of the big moments or a lot of the big moments that have happened in that sport is important. There's no surprise why all the sports have one. Football's in Canton, basketball's in Springfield, baseball in Cooperstown. Hockey, by the way, is in Toronto, as it probably should be. You need these hubs, these headquarters of love for the sport, I think is an important way to be able to allow fans to connect with different parts of the sport, to learn more about the sport, to allow more opportunities to fall in love with the sport. And even if these are all kind of intangible reasons why Jack Hughes ain't never getting his puck back, the other part of this too is simply that if every player was allowed to keep every piece of memorabilia that mattered to them, what would be left for any of these Hall of Fames? They'd be a joke, right? You wouldn't be able to go to a Hall of Fame and see all the cool things that are there because the players or the coaches would have them all, or certainly at least a larger share of them. So while I get Jack Hughes wanting to have the puck, I mean, who wouldn't? Who wouldn't want to have that puck? I would assume Jack Hughes might have a jersey or a stick or something from there. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he doesn't have anything. I'm not sure. There's a picture, by the way, of the display that certainly seems like there's a lot of memorabilia from that game that is in the possession of the Hockey Hall of Fame. Either way, Jack Hughes is certainly getting a number of spoils from scoring that goal, not the least of which is a dang gold medal. So as much as I can understand Jack Hughes' desire to be in possession of that puck, even to give it to his dad, if that is truly honestly what this is about, I think the Hall of Fame having the priority does make a good amount of sense. Because if the Hockey Hall of Fame and any Hall of Fame doesn't have that ability and that right to have access to all that memorabilia, then what's the Hall of Fame doing? What's the point of having one if it's going to be the hall of a few things? So I understand Jack Hughes being upset, but I think the Hall of Fame has the better argument here for sure. Speaking of hockey, there's a debate going on recently about the playoff format, in large part because Gary Bettman opened his mouth and said something stupid, which, you know, is not too uncommon for Bettman in particular and sport league or league commissioners in general. But the debate here is actually one that I think I'm on Bettman's side. So the argument is, right now in the Central Division in the Western Conference, you've got Colorado and Dallas and Minnesota, who all have 90 points right now. There are only two other teams in the entire league who have at least 90 points, Carolina and Buffalo. So 3 of the top 5 teams right now are sitting in one division. And the way that the NHL playoffs are currently set up, which is a little bit of an homage to the way the league used to be, where you'd play you play 4 teams out of each division, and then once you crowned a division champion in the postseason, then you'd go out and finish the whole Stanley Cup thing. And I remember growing up watching that. It was super fun to see. Like, I was a Winnipeg Jets fan, so you'd get like Calgary and Vancouver and Edmonton, and it'd be those 4 teams or some combo of those 4 teams every year, and there'd be consistent rivalry. It was cool. It was intimate as much as sports get. So I always liked having that format. It was just, I thought it was fun. Now, I understand now, if you did that now, one of the reasons they don't do that exclusively now is because you might have the 5th best team in one division be wildly better than the 4th best team in a different division. So I think the NHL has done a good job and a smart thing about making an effort to put the best teams in the postseason as a whole, even if that means you don't get 4 teams from each division and you don't get that fun, cozy, intimate playoff structure where you got to get out of your division first to make the playoffs, even if for the most part that's what it is. And there are a lot of years where the 7th and 8th best playoff teams are in fact the 4th place team from both divisions, so you just get a top 4 and then you can just play that out. So I enjoy that. I enjoy the throwback to the old format. Now, the argument against here is because you have a situation where Colorado and Dallas and Minnesota are so good, one of those teams who certainly should not be out in round 1 is now going to be out in round 1. And I understand that. It does seem wrong. The solution that's been proposed is instead of having 4 teams from each division or 3 teams from each division and then 2 wild cards, you just go 1 through 8. You say, we got 16 teams in a conference, which I think is where the NHL is going to end up when they expand again. Or they may have it right now. I'd have to check again. And you just take the top 8 in each conference and put them in the playoffs and seed them 1 through 8. Whoever has the most points is 1, second most is 2. Divisions are irrelevant. And while that would be more fair, it's also kind of not fun at all, right? It's very antiseptic to say, we're just going to go 1 through 8. That's what the NBA does. And now the NBA has other problems in their playoff format, but the NBA going 1 through 8 has not made anything. Divisions are irrelevant in the NBA. The NBA plays the regular season to determine 1 through 8, and that's it. And I think it does demean what the regular season means. The NHL, by the way, is going to go to 84 games. They're going from 82 to 84 in the regular season, in large part to balance out intra-division games. Because right now, you play the other 7 or 6 teams in your division. I think it's 7. You play some of them 4 times and some of them 3. By adding 2 more games, Now you can play a totally balanced schedule. Well, what's the point of doing that if you're just going to go to 1 through 8 in the postseason? Who cares if you're playing a balanced division schedule? What you got to worry about now is playing a balanced conference schedule, because the only thing that matters if you're going straight 1 through 8 is how you finish in the conference. Being first or second in the divisions don't matter anymore. So it's going 1 through 8 would be not diametrically opposed to, but certainly not in concert with what the league is doing in terms of its schedule. The other part of this is too, and Bill Guerin, who's the president of the Minnesota Wild, who's someone who kind of pointed out the problem here. Now, he's not being a total jerk and complaining about it, but he is pointing out the issue of it's not fair to have 2 of the top 3 teams in the league be out after round 1. 2 issues with that. Number one, the idea that the Sabres are not among one of the top 3 teams in the NHL right now is ridiculous. I don't care how many points Colorado or Dallas or Minnesota has. The Sabres are easily, right this second, one of the top 3 teams in the NHL. So there is the chance, maybe even the likelihood, that a team outside the top 3 is one of the ones that's going to be out in round 1. Separate of that, even if you went from the division format to the 1 through 8 conference format, all you're doing for the, let's say right now it would be Minnesota against Dallas in round 1 as the second and third place teams in the Central, all you're doing is moving that matchup to round 2. It's not like Minnesota and Dallas suddenly would play each other in the Stanley Cup final if you went through a 1 through 8 conference format. You're just moving it back 1 round. So what's the point? Is it really worth it to change the playoff format, to totally demean what divisions might be, just so you can take that matchup and move it back around? Now, the problem is Gary Bettman, in his attempt to defend it, said that one of the reasons why the current format is great is because the NHL has one of the best first rounds in sports. Who cares? There's not, as much as I don't care about taking the matchup and moving it from round 1 to round 2, I also don't like the current format because first round matchups are awesome. For the most part, they're not. I mean, look, every hockey playoff series has a degree of awesomeness to it just because of how close the sport is. We've seen 8-speed 1 seeds all the time by the bounce of a puck or some goalie getting hot. So the round 1 of any hockey playoff in the NHL especially is going to be fun no matter what the format is, because you don't know what the hell's going to happen in this league. So if the argument for Bettman is we want to keep this because we think round 1 is awesome, that's just ridiculous. The best argument, in my opinion, for keeping the format the way it is because it's a cool throwback to how the league was. For people who are my age, late 40s, and a lot of people in both directions, 10 or 15 years, we grew up on the playoff format looking a lot like it does now. And it was cool. It was fun to say. I mean, imagine if the NFL said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take 8 teams make the playoffs, but it's just first and second every division. So you got to be 1 or 2 in the division to make the playoffs. And then to move on to the round of the quarterfinals of the league or the conference semifinals, you got to beat the other team in your division. So you got to get out of your division. Now, look, in a league with a small sample size like the NFL has, where they only play 17 games, soon to be 18, you can't do that because you're going to have a number of years where you have a 12 or 11 win third place team who doesn't make the playoffs. But it would be cool. It would be unique. It would be interesting. If you got to the end of the year and you're the Bills in an era where the Dolphins and Jets are functional and not ridiculous right now, to where you had to finish second to make the playoffs, I think it would be fun. Even if I would never propose it, because again, you'd have too many years in the small sample size NFL where the wrong team gets in the postseason. And again, I don't think changing around postseason formats based on small seeding issues is worth it. This is a one-time thing where one division has 3 teams in the top 5. I know the Central's been really good the last couple of years. This is not something that happens all the time. Most of the time you have, if you want to take the top 5 teams, they're spread out at least among 3 divisions. The top 8 is going to be it's going to be a more fair disbursement of who the good teams are. And this happens all the time where you get one unique circumstance and people want to throw up their hands and change everything. The NFL has this issue with division winners who are like 9-8 hosting wildcard teams who are 12-5. And yeah, that's an egregious situation that might deserve some small tweaks. But I don't throw the whole playoff system out for 1 year. And I think in large part, this is just one weird year for hockey to where you've got 3 teams in the same division who are among the top 5 in the sport. Can't overreact to one-time circumstances in sports. And it happens a lot with this particular issue, to where you have a playoff format where one division's really bad or one division's really good. So it creates a matchup where you think the team that has home field advantage or the team who's playing in round 1 or 2 should be matching up in a different round. I get all that. I don't think it's worth changing things up. And keep in mind, the reason a guy like Bill Guerin, who's the president of an organization, is complaining about this is not because it's unfair or it's bad for the fans. It's because all these teams make money based on how long they're in the playoffs. So the Dallas Stars, who are currently the number 2 team in the NHL with 96 points, if they somehow lose a best of 7 to Minnesota, which is certainly not a ridiculous proposition based on how good both teams are, then their great regular season might be rewarded with 3 home games in the postseason. And that's a significant chunk of cash you're losing, to where in a 1-8 format, if Dallas is playing like Anaheim, a series in which they'd be more heavily favored, at the very least, you might get 6 or 7 home playoff games, maybe even 8, even if you get bounced in round 2. So the reason the teams are against this is about the money. All right, that's going to do it for me today. Thanks very much for being with me here on the Endgame. Be back on Monday. Enjoy the tournament this weekend. Should be awesome. Let's see. How about these upsets? Who won some games here? High Point knocked off Wisconsin by a point. That's a shocker. Siena with an 11-point lead on Duke at halftime. I know you guys all know who won. I'll be very interested to find out about the end of that game. Thanks very much for catching me today. I'll be with you again on Monday. This is Rochester First. Stay tuned. We got a whole lot more coming up. The news right after this.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.